Lucky Strike presents Your Hit Parade, starring Frank Sinatra.
Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men?
And now, Smile a While with Lorenzo Jones and his wife, Belle.
Here's the Manhattan merry-go-round that brings you the bright side of life, that whirls you in music to all the big night spots of New York town, to hear the top songs of the week sung so clearly you can understand every word and sing them yourself.
This is the Golden Age of Radio. I'm Dick Bertel, and tonight we'll take you on another audio excursion back to radio's formative years. You'll hear the programs that made the era golden, and meet people who made those broadcasts a reality.
The Golden Age of Radio with Dick Bertel is brought to you by Burritt Mutual Savings Bank, serving Central Connecticut since 1889, and by WTIC. You'll meet this evening's special guest after these words from Burritt.
Burritt Mutual Savings Bank asks you this question: why should you save? Burritt Mutual Savings Bank will also try to answer. The reasons for savings are almost endless. 1, it can open the door to your new home. 2, it can give you the means to new furniture, a new car, a boat, a vacation. 3, it can help send your children to college. 4, it can give you that glorious feeling of independence and prosperity. Don't ever feel that you have to have large amounts to save. At Burritt, deposits as small as $1 are welcome. Really welcome. Start now and save for all these reasons and perhaps some of your own. If you can't save a lot, save a little. At Burritt Mutual Savings Bank, where deposits are safe and earn good dividends. Start your account tomorrow.
And now the Golden Age of Radio and your host, Dick Bertel.
Good evening. Here is radio collector Ed Corcoran once again. Ed, we have a guest tonight who is going to put the whole story of radio together for us, isn't he?
Yes, Dick, we have a man who has really written a book that documents radio, which has never been done before. Dick, his name is Bill Owen.
Bill Owen and Frank Buxton first came out with a book called Radio's Golden Age. Bill, how far back? About 6 years ago?
Well, actually, it goes back, Dick, some 8 years. We got the idea of throwing together what was going to be a little pamphlet. It all started in a television studio in New York, where Frank was on a show and I was his announcer. And we used to pass the hours by just asking one another, hey, who was the star of such and such a movie and who played such and such a radio show and so on. Well, we came across a few disagreements, and one day we had this argument as to who played a certain role on radio, and I said it's so-and-so, and he said it's so, and I can't remember which show it was at the moment. Anyway, I said, well, that's simple. I'll go to the Fifth Avenue Library and look it up. So I go to one of the world's foremost libraries in New York City and asked the librarian for some books on the old radio programs. Well, there were books on how to build radios, how to write for radio, how to direct, but nobody had ever thought to compile a book on listing who played the various roles. So Frank and I said, well, let's throw together a little pamphlet. We'll maybe have a 16-page pamphlet. We'll say who played Superman, who played Ma Perkins and Dick Tracy. So the first thing you know, we're researching a book. Neither one of us were professional writers at all, had no background in this type of thing. And it just like Topsy grew and grew. And first thing we know, we would get in touch with one of the actors, and he'd give us the name of the director, the producer, the theme song, and then we'd say, well, let's put this down. And Frank and I got together with these mounds of material after a year or so of this, and we said, what do we do with it now? And we said, well, let's just throw it together.
And you published the book yourselves, as I recall.
And it's been called different things. It's been called a giant playbill of radio. It's been called an encyclopedia, a reference book. I don't know yet what it is. I don't think there's any book quite similar to what this is. It's basically a listing of the principal radio shows of what we consider the Golden Age, which is pre-1950, and who played what. And anything else that we could find out. Now, you notice some of the entries are very sketchy. Some are very detailed and involved. We put in whatever we could come across. This meant interviewing people, talking to them, corresponding, going through thousands and thousands of publications. I went blind at the library, going through microfilm and so on. And the result is something that I guess makes you an instant expert on old radio.
Well, it's been our Bible ever since this program has been on, and I do want to remind our listeners that its new title, which I don't think I gave, is The Big Broadcast, 1920 to 1950. This is published by Viking Press, incidentally. I suppose that the natural place to turn, Bill, would be the network files themselves.
Well, I'll tell you, ABC gave me their entire network files in a manila envelope. That's
I guess that summarizes.
When television came along, Dick and Ed, it just everything that pertained to radio was unimportant. I think we all remember that era very sadly. They thought that radio was the forerunner and something new. We finally arrived, so get rid of this. I know in Cincinnati, for example, one of the great stations out there, WLW, they threw them in the basement and let them continue broadcasting, which was very nice of them. But they paid no more attention to the radio operation, and nobody even knew it was on the air. Everything was television, and that's what happened basically at the networks. Television was the fair-haired son.
I understand that Mutual had virtually no records at all.
They exactly had nothing, and it was unfortunate because so many of the Mutual programs were very important in the history of radio. They had kind of a monopoly, as you'll recall, on the detective shows and a lot of the children's afternoon adventures. And I would have maybe the name of one actor on the show, and possibly the actor was no longer around, and I would just strike out. So we were frustrated time after time in trying to research these shows, and we relied a lot on luck and word of mouth. We put ads in various trade journals saying, if you know anything about any of the old radio shows, get in touch with us. Now, you have to keep in mind that 8 years ago is not very far back in time, but it really predates most of the nostalgia of radio. That's more or less a recent thing, possibly not for Ed, but in terms of the collectors around the country, and there weren't too many people who were involved in that sort of thing. So we were kind of pioneering this.
How'd you do NBC, by the way, with their files?
NBC and CBS, I must single out. Particularly, we had good luck. NBC had a large room, maybe a 20 by 20 room, just chock full of index cards in bad shape, old, dog-eared, tattered, and so on. But they had information for each show that had ever been on the network. And they gave me access to their files and their recordings. And CBS had excellent cross-reference material post-1945. Apparently one day in 1945 somebody said, let's get organized, and they did. But anything prior to 1945 at CBS was hit or miss. But what they had done, they categorized each show that was on the network, and they would have an individual file for it, and in this file would be everything pertaining to it. For example, you would have all the press releases. Each show would have its own press agent, and he would write about who's going to be in what show this week, just as they do now for TV Guide and so on. And by going blind, as I say, for a couple of years of researching, why I was able to come up with an awful lot of material from the networks. But once we had that was only the foundation. That was the cornerstone.
There's a great story about a tattered 3x5 index card.
I remember the
regarding Ellery Queen.
That was over at NBC, and the little old lady who had so kindly let me into the studios was busy doing something else, and she was a little dubious about letting me have access in the first place. But here I had been working away now for 3 or 4 days, making notes, and I came across a name of one of the people who had played Ellery Queen, and there was a note next to it on this card that said, "Do not let anyone know that he is playing Ellery Queen." Some sort of a sponsor conflict, I assume, is what it was all about. But that was like 1937. And I called the lady over and I said, "Notice this note here. I guess it's all right now, isn't it? 25 or 30 years later to make note of it." And she wrinkled her brow and was quite concerned. She said, "See, I just shouldn't have let you have access to these files."
Well, getting back to your book, Bill, the thing that impressed me above everything else was one man's family, because this is a complete genealogy, everything from Father Barber right down to the great-grandchildren. There must be 30 or 40 or 50 different people involved here. Yeah.
Well,
all the names. How did you ever get something like this?
I think I mentioned, that we relied on luck, and this is probably a good example of luck. I had known a man named Walter Shepard when I was stationed with the Air Force overseas, and he'd been a producer at AFN, and I'd been doing sports over there. And we came to a parting of the ways. He went home, and I went home, so on. And then 15 or so years went by, and I got a call while I was doing the research. Somebody said that Walter Shepard is on the line from WRVR-FM in New York and wants to talk to you. And I said, "Walt, how are you?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "I think you might be interested. I did some research on one man's family, and I hear you're looking for material." I guess he had responded to one of the trade journals. And I said, I sure am. And I thought maybe he'd, have a couple of names in an envelope to mail to me. And it turns out that he had done a college paper, for, I believe, a master's on the subject of one man's family. So he had a very understanding professor that would tolerate a paper being turned on that subject. But in it, as you see here before you, he had done a complete genealogy. Everything you'd ever want to know, the history of it, he'd worked together with a producer and writer, Carlton E. Morse. As a matter of fact, One Man's Family, in my mind, is the ideal entry. This is what we wish the whole book would look like. In other words, everything of any importance attached to that show is listed. Now, compared with some of the other entries, we just weren't able to get that kind of detail.
And I think it's about time that we played a full-fledged excerpt on our program, don't you?
Okay, Dick, this is one that Bill and I had talked about before we went on the air, one of his favorite shows, Life with Luigi.
We invite you to enjoy Life with Luigi, a new comedy show created by Cy Howard and starring that celebrated actor, Mr. J. Carroll Nash, with Alan Reed as Pasquale. When Luigi Basco left Italy to start his new life in America, he promised his mother that he would write and tell her about his adventures. So now, let's read Luigi's letter as he writes to Mama Basco in Italy.
Dear Mamma mia. Well, now that I'm here in America over a year, I'm getting to act like a real American. All day long, I'm play the radio. I'm listening to what they call a disc jockey. That's the fellow. That's the fellow who not can sing, act, or make the funny jokes, but he's got a big talent for playing a phonograph.
Luigi, my friend. Hello, Luigi. Hello.
Hello, Pasquale.
Hey, Luigi, my daughter Rose is asking me I should give you this letter.
Huh? Oh, Valentine card. But Pasquale, Valentine's Day is in February.
For my daughter Rose, every day is a Valentine. Go ahead, Luigi. Read what she's writing you inside.
All right. Let me see.
Go ahead.
Roses are red, violets are blue. If you marry me, I'll marry you.
Well, what do you answer, my son?
Pasquale, if I'm going to be sensible,
I no ask you to be sensible, be stupid, to marry my daughter.
No, Pasquale, she's too fat.
Fat. There you go with the fat talk again. And Luigi, remember one thing. Like a Professor Einstein says, everything in life has got a relative.
Huh?
Sure. Roses weigh 250 pounds. But compared to the fat lady in the circus who's weigh 750 pounds, or to the elephant that's weigh 2 tons, Roses is just a drop in the bucket.
Who by bucket?
To you was meant for something much bigger.
Bigger, what's that?
Rosa! Rosa!
You called me, Papa!
Yes? Come here, my little Garicolci. Rosa, say hello to Luigi.
Hello,
Rosa, Luigi's have a very bad week. Make him feel good. Tell him something nice and tender.
Something nice and tender?
Yes.
Pot roast.
All all right, Luigi. But let's talk about you and your future.
Future?
Yes. Believe me, there's only one job for a fella like you that got no talent.
What the job is this?
Husband.
This is the Golden Age of Radio with Dick Bertel, brought to you by Burritt Mutual Savings Bank, serving Central Connecticut since 1889. And by 1080 Radio, WTIC, Hartford.
Buying a new car in 1972? If so, bank credit may cost you less. At Burritt Mutual Savings Bank, we offer low-cost, convenient auto loans. But we can do more than just put you on the road. We help you establish credit with a bank. We give you cash buyer leverage, and above all, you either start or continue a relationship with a large and progressive mutual savings bank. Once your credit is established, you may want to purchase a new home, improve your existing home, or take a personal loan to finance your trip across the country. Whatever your borrowing needs, it will pay you to start doing business with the Big B, Burritt Mutual Savings Bank. Once an established Burritt customer with good credit, you become a preferred Burritt borrower. So don't wait. Come into any office of the Big B, Burritt Mutual Savings Bank.
Bill Owen, co-author of The Big Broadcast from 1920 to 1950, a new, revised, and greatly expanded edition of radio's Golden Age. Our guest tonight here on the Golden Age of Radio.
I think there are two areas in which radio really reigns supreme, and if you're going to compare it with television, which we all inevitably do, I think the areas it really stands out are radio comedy compared with the situation comedy that you see on television, if you can call it that, and the area of the mysteries, the mystery shows, which I guess encompasses some of the detectives, such as The Shadow and so on. But to this day, I don't think that you can ever get the chill bumps that you do listening to some of the old recordings, even the out-of-date ones, the material which is non-topical, completely gone as far as we're concerned. It's thrilling. Inner Sanctum, I think, is the classic example. When it tried to make it on television, it came across as a spoof. They tried to be very serious, the creaking door and everything. It just didn't make it. But I don't think too many people laughed when Raymond Edward was opening that door on on Inner Sanctum on radio.
No, I doubt that very much. Bill, you grew up in this era, and you're active in it today. Looking back, researching it as you have, do you find that it was a more imaginative time, a more exciting time in which to work if you were in the field?
Well, I guess as a youngster, I always wanted to be in radio, and unfortunately, I came along at the moment at which radio was changing its form. I sometimes think we shouldn't even use the word radio anymore because it's we certainly don't have radio programs as such, mass entertainment, except this one. But the mass entertainment is completely changed. It's a service, and in many ways, it's of more value possibly to society in the present form, with the emphasis on news coverage and so on. But I just can't help but think of radio without a sense of sadness that we're missing something. Particularly this generation, I think, is being deprived of a tremendous medium of entertainment. Of course, radio, when it was at its peak in the 30s and 40s, it came along at a very propitious moment in history because, first of all, the economics of the time were such that you could afford maybe to buy a radio, and that was about it. Not too many people could afford to even go to the theater, even though the tickets were only 11 cents for children and 16 for adults, most parts around the country. So there was no television. Access to the Broadway theater was limited to the people of the Northeast. So what else was there? In addition, the news events of the time were becoming so important. Now, whether radio was responsible for causing the news events or was just witnessing them, I think you could debate that endlessly. But had radio come along years later or years earlier, I don't think it would have had this tremendous impact. It was guided divinely, I'm convinced, and therefore all America, and the world indeed, was listening to radio.
And of course it was a special art form, and I think of it as an art form, as I'm sure you do, Bill. It simply wasn't television without pictures, was it?
That'll raise hackles if anybody says it was. No, it's a natural thing to think of it as a forerunner of television, but it's a totally different medium. I think we pointed out by references to Inner Sanctum, Fibber McGee, who could not make it on television, it's just a different ballgame completely. And you may as well compare any other two media you want as to pick out radio and television. I think the thing that links them is the fact that people from radio automatically moved into television because they were there and the same facilities were being used. Many of the announcers bridged the gap. But the techniques of acting, for example, to just home in on one particular area, totally different techniques. And some actors could make it, could bridge the gap, and some couldn't. Carl Swenson went very nicely from radio to television without missing a beat. Others fell by the wayside. This applied to announcers, it applied to writers, directors. It's a different area. It's as we all know, it's an area in which you had to use the imagination. The listener participated more. I always had the feeling as a youngster, I don't know whether I'm alone in this, but that when I came across a show on radio that grabbed me, usually children's entertainment, I had the feeling that this show was written just for me, that I'm the only one in the world that is listening in on this private conversation, Dick Tracy or Superman, whatever it was. Whereas in television, I have the feeling they're just throwing this thing out like a shotgun, scattering shot, and they don't really care whether you like it or not. This is what you're going to get.
Yeah, very interesting.
How about time out now for another excerpt from the past?
Well, Dick, this one here, I have to be the expert for a change. I'm looking at The Witch's Tale in the book here.
And I guess you are entitled to be the expert on this one.
And I pointed out to Bill that the opening that they use is from the Australian version of the show.
That's
and,
incredible.
I'd like to play the American version. You know,
where did I get the Australian version? I haven't even been to Australia.
Not from Ed's file, I'll tell you.
So why don't we play this version, and maybe you can make a revision your next time you put the book out.
Right.
We bring you The Witch's Tale, written and produced by Alonzo Dean Cole. And now let us make our way to ancient Salem, where old Nancy and Satan, her black cat, reside.
Hannah, I'm 51-year-old I be today. Yes, sir. Hannah, I'm 51-year-old. Well, Satan, here all these folks be gathered to hear another of our pretty little bedtime stories. And tonight, we're gonna tell 'em one that's become famous all over the world. Douse out them lights. That's right. Nice and dark and cheerful now. Sitting in the spooky shadows is the way to hear our pretty tales. Now draw up to the fire and gaze into them embers. Gaze into 'em deep, and soon you'll be with us in Switzerland. Soon you'll hear our yarn of Frankenstein. Frankenstein! Don't break the door now. Who is it?
Hi, Madame Maurice.
Oh.
Professor Waldman.
Just wait a minute.
Oh, good evening, Madame Maurice.
Good evening. Raining cats and dogs. Step inside so I can get this door closed.
Yes,
And give me that wet umbrella before you drip it all over my clean floor. Oh, you men of science. But I suppose I should be used to your carelessness after keeping house for Victor Frankenstein.
He's a very young scientist, Madame Moritz. Just wait until he reaches my age.
Oh, you make me shudder.
And where is our Victor? In his laboratory?
Is he ever anywhere else? If I didn't believe that he calls up the devil in that laboratory, there are times when I'd go in and drag him out by the hair of his head, despite his forbidding me ever to enter the place. I cannot enter that laboratory of his, but he cannot close up my ears. At night I hear strange sounds from there, the cries of animals in pain, and then from him, who has always been so kind, insane shouts of triumph. And I have seen the things strange men bring in this house, hideous things from the slaughterhouses and the morgues. He's coming out. Hear him?
Yes.
From the way he keeps it locked up, one would think that laboratory was filled with the rarest jewels.
Well, good evening, Victor.
Oh, Professor Waldman. I'm so glad you received my message and came at once.
If we weren't as mad as you, we wouldn't have come in this awful rain.
Is it raining?
Is it raining?
That's too bad. For this evening, Madame Moritz, I must send you to your sisters.
My sister's in this downpour.
I'll call a cab for you. I hate to ask you, but tonight Professor Waldman and I must have the house alone. This is the night for which I've worked so long. The night on which I shall perfect the crowning achievement of the world.
Oh, what are you talking about? What have you done?
My dear old nurse. Tomorrow I shall tell you. I shall tell you everything tomorrow. Tomorrow I shall show you the work of my hands that shall make my name ring through the ages. Tonight you must go.
You finished your work.
Yes. You must go now.
There'll be no more dead men's bodies coming through that door.
No.
No more refuse from the slaughterhouse.
No, dear, please go.
I'm going at once, even though I catch my death of cold in this awful rain. It's worth it to know you've finished.
Now, Victor, you are delirious with excitement. What have you discovered?
Wait until she's out of hearing. She wouldn't understand.
Well, she's gone. Now, what is this mystery of yours?
Come into the laboratory. You shall see. Professor Waldman, from the putrescence of death, I have discovered the secret of life.
Life?
Yes. I, Victor Frankenstein, have created man. See? You see what I have done? Bit by bit, I have fashioned him. His organs, his eyes, his brain, his external flesh.
A beautiful giant statue.
But a statue only until I give him life. And now the time has come. That is why I sent for you, old teacher. You who pointed out the path.
Oh, I know nothing of all this.
Oh, yes. You sent me to the ancients for forgotten knowledge. Through them I learned of magic and the hidden truths of nature.
Well, Victor, you are mad. You frightened me.
I am not mad. The treasure house of nature, I have wrested her dearest secret. It is in this machine. I pull the lever. Watch! The moment he will live. And I have improved on nature. I have improved on God.
Why, the giant moves.
Yes.
It's pulsational in the veins.
In a moment he will rise and walk.
Great God!
No, great Frankenstein!
Victor, the beautiful contours of his body are changing.
What?
Yes, the flesh is assuming the look of death. It's shriveling like a mummy.
He's becoming ugly. Misshapen.
But you have created a horror.
A machine! Let me turn it off!
No, too late. He breathes.
He lives! God! I have made a monster.
Our guest tonight is Bill Owen, co-author of The Big Broadcast, the new, revised, and greatly expanded edition of radio's golden age, the complete listing, or almost complete listing, of all the radio shows that were ever on the air.
You know, you mentioned almost complete, and I got the scare of my life. We know we'll never have every show, no matter how many years we keep researching, but this thing was just about ready to go to press in the original version, and I got in touch with Mary Jane Higby, which I'd been for a long time, and she said, by the way, do you have everything on Elsie Beebe? I said, Elsie Beebe? And she said, well, that was one of the biggest soap operas of all. You must have. And that really tightened my heart muscles.
Sure.
I said, well, I never even heard of it. I got to be honest. She says, how could you be researching radio and never have heard of Elsie Beebe? I said, I'm sorry. I missed it somehow. And I said, was it known by any other title? She says, yes, Life Can Be Beautiful. And you can see from the initials of Life Can... And she said, nobody in the trade ever referred to it as Life Can Be Beautiful.
It was always
This was an in thing.
LCB.
All the actors would say, I got a job next week on Elsie Beebe. So I was saved on that one.
Mary Jane Higby, of course, appeared in how many countless shows, Bill?
Well, she did that show, When a Girl Marries, for, 18 years or something like that. Yeah. Thousands of broadcasts. Mm-hmm. This is one of the great things, I think, that some of us take comfort in, possibly subconsciously in radio, was the stability of it all. You know, we didn't go through that business for the most part of constantly changing the time slots. I don't know how the kids today keep up with their favorite television shows.
Right.
Because you knew that show was on, Red Skelton, for example, was on in the Midwest, 9:30 on Tuesday nights, year after year after year. And it always had the same lineup. There was always Fibber McGee, and then there was Bob Hope, and then there was Red Skelton. And you could set your watch by these programs coming on. And I think we took comfort. Also, the stability of the sponsors. The sponsors did not sit there and worry every week about the ratings. They simply bought a show for the year, and in many cases they went on for 15, 20 years and stayed with the show. Look at the identification of some of the product sponsors today. You know, like Jack Armstrong and Little Orphan Annie and so on.
Can you pass by the cereal shelf at a supermarket and go by the Wheaties box without thinking of Jack
Perfect
Armstrong?
example, isn't it?
It's impossible.
I'm sure that the people who made Wheaties in those days and promoted it were not really aware of what tremendous impact they were going to have for years to come, long after Jack Armstrong had ceased touring the world.
You mentioned Red Skelton a while earlier. We haven't had Red Skelton on this program in some time. As a matter of fact, Ed, tonight we're going to hear a Red Skelton excerpt from my collection.
Oh, gee, I'm fired.
This I happened to record off the air, Bill, back in 1950.
Oh, sure.
And this was at a time when CBS was making an attempt to bring all of the top comedians from both networks together on a Sunday night. You remember that?
Yeah, that's when NBC was no big comedians, is what it stood for. They bought them out, literally, lock, stock, and barrel. And I guess it's a testimony to the fact that NBC saw the handwriting on the wall. Maybe
they unloaded everybody, huh?
Yeah, they got a good price for them.
Well, here I am. CBS, this must be the place. Yep, there's a big sign that says, Tide presents Red Skelton. Tide. Tide in the Boy, all I got to say is it better be good this year or Tide's in and Skelton's out.
From Hollywood, the Red Skelton program, brought to you by Procter & Gamble's amazing new discovery for your whole family's wash, Tide. With Red Skelton, Dave Rose, the Four Knights, Lorene Tuttle, Pat McGee, and Dick Ryan, Martha Wentworth, and John Holbrook will be me, Rod O'Connor. Busy and nervous at his home, we find MGM's answer to mighty Joe Young. Red Skelton.
Well, Rod O'Connor.
Gee, Red, it's good to see you. Let me take a look at you. Gosh, you haven't changed a bit.
Yeah, well, okay, put me down, will you? You look good, too, Rod.
Well, I feel good, too. I've lost a few pounds.
You mean you have investments in England? Hey, I hear that every afternoon at 4 they serve 2.5-pound cake now. I went over to England this summer. I wanted to see what the American dollar looked like. Sneaks up on you, didn't it, huh?
Well, how do you feel about going to a new network?
Well, I'm a little nervous.
Well, you're always nervous. You should see a psychiatrist.
Oh, you kidding. Anybody who sees a psychiatrist ought to have his head examined. There's a brilliant remark.
You're not really that nervous.
I'm not, huh? Last night I put my pants to bed and I hung over the chair all night.
Well, okay, I'll help you dress.
Yeah.
Where do you keep your shorts?
In the third drawer.
Clean shirts?
Third drawer.
Your suit?
In the third drawer.
Well, how come you keep all your clothes in one drawer?
You're married. Stop asking silly questions.
Well, come on now and get dressed. You know, you promised to stop by and pick up the Four Knights.
Oh, yeah. Did you know that they're going to night school now?
No, what are they studying?
Hydramatics.
Hydramatics?
Oh, no. No.
What?
Yeah, they're studying hydramatics.
Hydramatics?
Yeah. See, that's in case anything goes wrong, they'll know how to shift for themselves. Well, come on, let's get down to CBS. My car's stacked up in the backyard here.
Okay.
Hey, Rod, you sit in the back. There's more room.
Okay.
Okay. Uh-oh. Here comes that nasty old neighbor of mine, that Mrs. Fussy. Let's get out.
Mr. Skelton! Mr. Skelton!
I'm sorry, I can't talk now, Mrs. Fussy. I'm on the air.
That, Mr. Skelton, is why we can't get rid of the smog in Los Angeles.
Miss Fussy, look.
Mr. Skelton, I don't have to take that kind of talk from you. And would you mind standing in the shade? The sun is over my house, and you're getting some of it on you.
But look,
I'm warning you. If you get a tan from my sun, when you peel, you'd better give the skin back to me.
Oh, really now,
Don't you ever stop talking? And another thing. While you were gone this summer, I found some of your ants taking sugar from my kitchen and putting it in a hole in your yard. Oh, how sneaky can you get? If my husband Jessup were only here.
You had a husband?
Now, what kind of a slurring remark was that? You don't think I could attract a man?
Oh, sure you could. You got everything that a man wants. Muscles, mustache.
Well, that does it. I'll get up a petition. And to think I was so happy when I heard you were going to CBS. I thought they meant China, Burma, and Saipan.
You know, I think I'm winning her over.
Oh, here come the four knights.
Yeah, sounds more like the four horsemen. Hiya, fellas. Come on, get in the car. We're late. Hey, what are you guys going to sing on the show?
Do the hucklebuck, you do the hucklebuck, and yes, oh, dance you know when the lights are down. Oh, dance your baby go. You do the hucklebuck, you do the hucklebuck. And if you don't know how...
Our guest tonight is Bill Owen, co-author of The Big Broadcast, the marvelous collection of all of the great radio shows that we heard here in America back in the 30s and 40s.
Dick, don't forget to mention the pictures. They're very good, too. There's a whole section.
Would you like me to show a few?
Yeah, why don't you get the camera on there and we'll look at them.
But at any rate, yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's interesting to... going through the book, you can see names that pop up at you, and so often we've had the reaction, gee, I didn't know they were on radio. People like Richard Widmark, we think of them solely as Hollywood performers, and I jotted down some of the other names of people who came from radio into Hollywood. Brian Dunleavy was one. Keenan Wynn, who was on The Shadow for many years. Van Heflin, I got a letter from Van Heflin probably 3 months or so before he died. And he said that he couldn't even remember these radio shows. He had done so many of them, and I'd asked him some specific questions. And he couldn't even say whether he had actually played those particular roles. He said, gee, I was so busy in those days. But it was so typical. Robert Walker, Frank Lovejoy, of course, was one of the great performers. Yes. And then some people kind of specialized in television, like Cliff Arquette, who had played the old-timer on Fibber McGee, was one of the two that had played that. Charlie Weaver, of course. Gary Moore made a rather successful jump. Lucille Wall, not Ball, but Wall, who's seen every afternoon on General Hospital. She's the head nurse, on whatever floor the action all takes place.
Don't forget Santos Ortega.
Santos Ortega must have been every detective ever conceived on radio. B. Benaderet was one of Jack Benny's telephone operators, remember?
Sure. What are you going to do for us, Ed? You're going to surprise us. You're going to show us that this book, The Big Broadcast of 1920 to 1950, isn't that complete.
Don't shoot it down.
Yeah, I hate to embarrass our guests here, really. This is nothing personally got this, Bill, but maybe I can be an author someday myself.
Right.
I'd like to just play a few things that aren't in the book to show you that they did exist.
Okay.
One of them is Admiral Byrd, and
you didn't make these up in your home studio.
No, this is Admiral Byrd was a great hero of the 30s, and he actually does appear in a show in person, as they will definitely say in the excerpt.
Adventures with Admiral Byrd. Another thrilling episode from the breathtaking career of America's greatest living explorer. And again, it is our privilege to present in person Admiral Richard E. Byrd.
Thank you, and greetings, everyone. I was away at the Advanced Weather Outpost when the following incident occurred. I got the whole story later on my return, but heard part of it by radio when it happened. The Autogyro, an experiment in Antarctic exploration, was the pride and joy of Bill McCormick, who rested along like a proud father. The rest of the mechanics and pilots at Little America regarded the Autogyro as a sort of ugly duckling of aviation. At the end of the winter night, all the aircraft had to be dug out from the underground chambers we had built to protect them from the extreme cold and the storms. One of the first to appear was the Autogyro. Once it was uncovered, the whole camp turned out to haul it to the surface. A mean job in the bitter cold. For some men, it was the first time out in the open in 4 months. But now, let's see what happened.
Hey, Seamus, will you level off this hump of ice on the runway? It'll have to be a whole lot more level than it is, or we'll never be able to budge the auto gyro. Okay, Bowling. Come on, fellas, let's make with the shovels over here. It's too bumpy yet.
Okay.
Coming right over. Hey, Smartback, how you coming with the rope?
The tow ropes are all secured to the gyro, Bowling. But I'm afraid our body will be too brittle.
I'll get Mac to look her over before we start a haul to the surface.
All right.
Hey, Mac! Hey, Hornet, come here. Yeah, what's up? What's up? You ready to start her out of the hole? Almost, Mac. Yep. Come on. All right, okay. Come on. All set again. All right, this time get her going, will you? Oh! Hey! Oh!
All right, that's a bit of Admiral Byrd dating back. Ed, what's your guess?
That's got to be the mid-30s anyway, Dick. Maybe even earlier than that.
Get smile power, the kind of confident, contented countenance that comes from cash, salted away cash, in a Burritt Mutual Savings Bank at the highest legal savings bank interest rate. And you don't need a lot of money to do it. You can save a little. It's the constant, patient, every payday habit of saving that really counts. At the Big B, we love your small deposits. We know they grow for you and for us. Result, we will both have smile power. Plus, we help with our high interest rates paid to you on your savings. Burritt Mutual Savings Bank. Deposits insured to $20,000 by FDIC.
This next one has a mighty title. I'm surprised.
Yes. This is a real.
Although I never heard of it, Bill, I'll tell you that.
It's a really big show. This next one. This was the Academy Award Theater. This was done out of Hollywood, and they actually broadcast movies that were nominated or received the Academy Award. And the excerpt I'm going to play tonight is Foreign Correspondent, which was a Hitchcock film back in the late 40s, or I guess it was early 40s, just before World War II. And this features Joseph Cotton. So you got your notebook out, Bill?
Yeah.
Are you getting copying all this down?
He was another prominent radio actor, Joseph Cotton.
Sure. Here he is.
The House of Squibb presents Academy Award. Every week, Squibb brings you Hollywood's finest. The great picture plays, the great actors and actresses. Techniques and skills chosen from the honor roll of those who have won or been nominated for the famous Golden Oscar of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Science. And now, E.R. Squibb & Sons, manufacturing chemist to the medical profession since 1858, bring you one of Hollywood's best-known stars, Joseph Cotton. Tonight you will hear Mr. Cotton in the exciting drama Foreign Correspondent, which was nominated for 4 different Oscars. Yes, for Best Photography, Best Original Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Production of the Year. Foreign Correspondent was nominated for the 1940 Academy Award.
Well, come right in, Miss Green. Put on your glasses, sit down, and take an epic. No, Miss Green, this is not to be an editorial for the Sunday edition. This is to be some notes on my lurid past. You see, before I came here to Springfield and bought this paper and became a substantial citizen, I was a reporter, Miss Green. Johnny Jones, foreign correspondent. That was long before there was even a phony war. I was sent to Europe to meet a man called Van Meer, known as the Strong Man of Holland. He had been one of the signers of a secret treaty between Holland and the Allied powers. I was to get Van Meer to talk and to tell me what was in that treaty. My wife's maiden name is Carol Fisher. Her father was head of the Universal Peace Party. I met Carol over there and fell for her like a ton. When she went down to Amsterdam with her father, I went too. There was a conference there, and I intended to kill two birds with one stone. For Van Meer was to be the principal speaker. I had met old Van Meer in Paris, so I didn't have much trouble nailing him when he got out of a cab in front of the conference building and started up the steps. He didn't seem very happy to see me. Why, Mr. Van Meer, how are you? We somehow seem to lose each other, sir. Don't you remember me? I'm the American reporter from New York. Seemed anxious to get away from me. Seemed not to remember me. Just then a photographer jumped out in front of it.
Hold it. Picture.
The guy pointed his camera at this Van Meer, and Van Meer's eyes got very big. And then I saw the gun in the photographer's hand. It went off then. I guess I stood there like a goon, just watching Van Meer fall. He was dead when he stopped rolling down the steps. This phony photographer dropped his camera and ran into the crowd. I ran after him. He got into a car and roared away. I looked for a car, and just then my sweet Carol comes riding up in the Bentley with one of those big blonde Englishmen at the wheel. I jumped into the car, pushed Carol over, and yelled at the handsome brute. Follow that car, quick, hurry.
Might as well humor him.
Right-o. What's the trouble? Chap shot someone?
Van Meer assassinated.
Dead?
Looks like it.
Bad show.
Couldn't be worse from his point of view.
Shooting at us, by Harry. Shattered the safety glass. Wonder whose make. Better hop into the back, old girl.
Good chauffeur we've got, Miss Fisher.
Very.
You two know each other?
Oh, I forgot. This is Scott Folliot, newspaper man, same as you, Johnny. Correspondent of London Post. Mr. Jones, Mr. Folliot.
How do you do? Here we are, old chap. Out in the country and very desolate, if you ask me.
Keep on his tail. He's around that curve behind the windmill.
We'll have him then, old boy. Here we go. I say, the chap in his car disappeared. Vanished.
He couldn't have.
He has.
Look at that. The sails on that windmill.
Well, quite common over here in Holland, old boy.
I could have sworn those sails were going against the wind just now.
Why don't you lie down on the wet grass, old boy, and cool off?
I'll cool off at the proper time, but first, would you do me a favor and go back and get the police?
Police? What for?
We shan't need the police. I've decided not to prosecute.
You're going to bring the police back here because our man is in there.
In where?
In that windmill.
What makes you think so?
While I'm explaining, a lot of things can happen. Will you please take my word for it and get the police? I'd go myself if I spoke the language.
What will you do?
I'll stick around here and do some snooping. I hate to seem executive, but this is serious.
Right you are, old boy. You shall have the police. Regiment of them.
There I was on a lonely flat plain with nothing but a windmill for company. Suddenly the mill stopped, and the sails reversed themselves against the wind. At the same time, I heard the drone of a plane. Then I knew. The reversed sails were a signal. The plane came into land. I crept up to the mill. There was a shed there, and in it the assassin's car. I went back and into the mill. Then I heard muffled voices. I crept around some more and found a wooden staircase. I went up. There was a door with a key in it. I heard someone coming after me. I pushed backwards into the room, closed the door. I was in the transmission room, the room with the wooden gears connected with the big sail outside. I stood there listening. Suddenly, I almost jumped out of my skin. A weak voice spoke.
Come in, mister.
And I whirled around, and there, tied to a ring in the floor, was Van Meer, alive.
I'm afraid you see me at a great disadvantage. I have just been given a drug of some sort. It affects the brain. They gave it to me when they moved me from. It's beginning now. I'm sorry.
But I saw you shot just now outside the conference hall. I saw it.
The man you saw shot was not I. He was a substitute who looked like me.
But why? What?
They want the world to think that I have been assassinated, to conceal the fact that I'm in their hands.
Their hands? Well, who are they?
I cannot explain. I am not certain. All that I can tell you is that they are going to take me somewhere by plane.
Van Meer's head dropped, and I jumped for the cross beam above me, pulled myself up and lay there near the big gear. The door opened, 4 men came in, picked up Van Meer, and took him away. When they had gone, when the plane had died away, I got out of there fast. I came back with the cops, and they thought I was nuts. There was no assassin's car, no assassin, no plane, and no Van Meer.
I laughed it off and went over to London with a big news beat in my pocket. I wanted to see Carol's father and find out if he could help me. The butler opened the door, and there was my future father-in-law having breakfast with a man whose face was the face that led the guttural voices up to take Van Meer away from the mill.
Bill, you must receive correspondence from people all over the country, do you, saying, I'm not mentioned in the book, and I did many
Dick
years.
Patel isn't in there, for one.
Right. He didn't do any work either, but...
Well, this is one of the problems. We'll hear from somebody, they'll say, hey, I played a supporting actor on Ma Perkins, 24 years ago. How come I'm not in there? The question is, do I just take him at his word? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. I just don't know. So we have to make decisions occasionally, and people do have faulty memories. So it's like raking leaves. You can never get every leaf gathered up. So I guess what we've done, we just get as much as we can, as much as we're certain of. Dates, I tell you, the real problem spots. Dates are very difficult because we might have somebody with an excellent memory, but they'll say, yeah, that was back in the 40s. Well, I want to know when did that broadcast begin?
that about wraps it up for us, and gosh, this hour has gone by all too quickly, Bill.
You can go on and on and on.
We will, I'm sure, after the show is off, too.
Getting into the future of radio, there's another whole topic. You can talk for hours. Will it come back or won't it?
In the meantime, Bill Owen, thank you very much for being our guest. Co-author, along with Frank Buxton, of The Big Broadcast, published by Viking Press. A complete collection of the radio shows of the 1920s through the 1950s. This is Dick Bertel.
This is Ed Corcoran.
Good night.
The Golden Age of Radio with Dick Bertel and the recordings of Ed Corcoran is brought to you by Burritt Mutual Savings Bank, serving Central Connecticut since 1889, and by WTIC. With recording and technical supervision by Bob Shirago, The Golden Age of Radio is edited and produced by Brian Hartnett. This is Al Terzi.
Don't touch that dial. Listen to...
The Kraft Foods Company presents Willard Waterman as the Great Gildersleeve.
Texaco service stations and dealers in all 48 states present for your entertainment Eddie Duchin and his music. Graham McNamee. And Edwin the Fire Chief.